In the Western Pyrenees, there is a population that should not look so unusual. The Basques were not hidden on an island. They did not live beyond a desert sealed from history. Armies crossed near them. Traders moved through their valleys. Empires rose around them. Rome came. Later, kingdoms formed. Languages changed across Europe. Yet when scientists looked at Basque blood, Basque language, and eventually Basque DNA, they found something that did not fit the ordinary map of Europe. For more than a century, that anomaly produced one dramatic question. Were the Basques the last survivors of Europe before Europe became Europe? At first, the clues seemed to point in that direction. Their language, Euskara, was unlike the languages surrounding it. Spanish, French, Latin, Celtic, Germanic, Slavic, all belonged to the Indo-European family. Euskara did not. It had no confirmed living relative. It stood alone, as if a fragment of an older world had somehow remained audible in the mountains. Then came the biological clues. Early blood group studies found striking patterns among Basques, including unusually high frequencies of Rh-negative blood and type O blood compared with many neighboring populations. These findings did not prove ancient isolation, but they sharpened the mystery. Here was a people with a language that seemed older than the linguistic map around it, and biological signals that also appeared unusual. So, scientists built explanations. Some argued the Basques were descendants of Paleolithic hunter-gatherers, the people who had lived in Western Europe before farming, before Indo-European languages, before the great migrations that reshaped the continent. Others proposed more exotic origins, migrants from the Caucasus, remnants of lost Iberian peoples, survivors of some vanished prehistoric population. The theories differed, but they shared the same assumption. Basque uniqueness must have come from somewhere very ancient or somewhere far away. But there was a problem. The more archaeology uncovered, the harder that simple story became. The Basque country was not untouched. The wider Iberian Peninsula had been transformed many times. Farmers arrived from Anatolia and the Mediterranean, bringing crops, animals, and new ways of life. Later, during the Bronze Age, people carrying steppe-related ancestry entered Iberia. Ancient DNA has shown that by around 2000 BCE, this movement had replaced a major portion of Iberian ancestry and almost all local Y chromosome lineages in many regions. Basques were not outside that process. They too carry ancestry connected to those Bronze Age transformations. That was the first crack in the old theory. If Basques were simply unchanged Ice Age survivors, their DNA should have looked like a frozen remnant of Europe before farming and before the Bronze Age. It did not. They were not genetically separate from Western Europeans in some completely alien way. They shared the broad ancestry of their neighbors. The mystery was not that they had escaped European history. It was that, after a certain point, they appeared to have experienced far less of it. The turning point came when researchers stopped comparing only modern populations and began placing Basque DNA against ancient genomes. In 2021, a major genomic study analyzed roughly 629,000 genetic variants across modern and ancient samples, including newly sampled individuals from the Basque region and surrounding Franco-Cantabrian areas. The result overturned the older mystery without making the Basques any less remarkable. Their genetic distinctiveness was not best explained by an unknown external origin. It was best explained by continuity since the Iron Age, combined with reduced gene flow afterward. That changed the question. Scientists had asked, where did the Basques come from? DNA suggested a better question. Why did surrounding populations keep changing while Basque communities changed less? The answer was not a wall of mountains. The Pyrenees mattered, but geography alone could not solve the case. The Basque region was crossed by trade, politics, and war. If mountains were enough, every mountain population in Europe would show the same pattern. They do not. The stronger clue was invisible: language. The 2021 study found that Basques were genetically distinct from neighboring populations, while nearby non-Euskara speaking groups occupied intermediate positions. It also found fine-scale genetic structure inside the Basque region itself, with patterns correlated not only with geography, but also with linguistic divisions. In other words, Euskara was not merely a cultural symbol floating above genetics. It may have helped shape who married whom, which villages exchanged people, and how ancestry moved or failed to move across short distances. This is the discovery that makes the Basque story so strange. Their uniqueness was not created by total isolation. It was maintained by boundaries people could cross physically, but often did not cross socially. A valley could be open to roads and still closed by marriage. A region could be known to empires and still preserve local inheritance, local identity, and local speech. The border was not always a cliff or a fortress. Sometimes it was a household. Sometimes it was a dialect. Sometimes it was the decision to raise children in the language of their grandparents. That helps explain why the Basques survived as a genetic and cultural anomaly without being a prehistoric fossil. They were not unchanged. No human population is. They absorbed the deep layers of European prehistory, hunter-gatherers, early farmers, Bronze Age ancestry. But after the Iron Age, their communities appear to have received less outside genetic input than many neighboring Iberian populations, including influences visible elsewhere from later movements across the peninsula. The most surprising conclusion is that the old scientists were partly right for the wrong reason. They sensed continuity. They saw that something ancient had endured. But they placed that continuity too far back, as if the Basques were a direct window into the Ice Age. DNA now suggests the clearer picture is more recent and more subtle. Basque distinctiveness does not come from being outside Europe's population history. It comes from belonging to that history, then preserving a particular regional profile with unusual strength after the Iron Age. This also changes how we understand Euskara. For generations, the language was treated almost like an archaeological artifact, proof of an unknown origin. But perhaps its greatest historical power was not where it came from. It was what it did. It created continuity. It marked belonging. It helped communities remain socially coherent even while the world around them changed language, law, religion, and political identity. The Basques were not who many scientists thought they were. They were not a lost tribe from somewhere else. They were not a pure remnant of Paleolithic Europe. They were not untouched by the Bronze Age migrations that reshaped Iberia. The DNA points to something more human and more interesting, a population formed from the same great prehistoric currents as its neighbors, but later protected from extensive mixing by culture, language, local marriage patterns, and historical circumstance. That is why the Basque case matters far beyond the Pyrenees. It shows that genes do not move only with armies. They move through marriage, inheritance, village networks, language communities, and social trust. A language can preserve more than stories. It can influence the biological history of a people. For 100 years, the mystery seemed to be that the Basques came from nowhere scientists could identify. Now the evidence suggests the opposite. The Basques came from the same deep European past as the people around them. What made them extraordinary was not that they escaped history, but that after history reached them, they held on to a language, to local communities, and to patterns of belonging strong enough to leave a signature in DNA for more than 2,000 years. The real mystery was never why the Basques were so ancient. It was why so much around them changed while they remained recognizably themselves,